Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance? Situations and circumstances. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance?
Cake mixing, race mixes, matrix, kill the witches, 3 digits, made of 6s.
Oh yeah. Let me clear my throat. Yeah, once again, you're here at kcbzradio.com. And yeah, this is going to be a beautiful day and a beautiful night, depending on where you're at all over the globe. You're here with us at Situation and Circumstance. And we do this every second and fourth Tuesday. We sit in that sweet spot of perpetual metamorphosis layered with perspective. Because all over the world, there is a situation and circumstance. Yeah, I have to say this right now off top. I'm hot as, I don't know, what am I hot as? People always say hot as a white woman in the Baptist church. I don't know if that's what I want to say. I think I'm hot like big breasts, that underneath flap.
Wow.
That underneath flap.
The underneath part. Like, what is an underneath flap?
Oh, you're talking about the under, like the part under
I don't know what that's called. Like under flap.
That's his name. Under boob.
Under, like the I'm hot as a big under boob underneathness.
Underneathness.
Whose man is this?
Boob pocket.
Okay. I like boob pocket. I'm hot as a boob pocket. This just keeps going. You can put a hot pocket under that boob and be any hotter than that. Once again, I am your host, Mr. Classiq, ACE, another classic entertainer, a.k.a. Anthony. And I'm here with Julius and Tiana. Say what's up to the people. This is the best team ever.
What's good? What's good?
What's going on?
Yeah. One of these times we gonna do this, and Julius gonna say something different than just the two. What's going on? What's up? What it do? He gonna say so. I don't even think he says 3. What's going on? Okay, that's technically more than 2 words.
Mm-hmm.
And so last time, we spoke about a few different things. But what we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk about gender roles, but we're going to kind of talk about it, we're going to talk about it a little bit more having to do with defining masculinity or what is up with masculinity. And so we're going to go into different sections to try to dive deeper into that. Which also sounds kind of masculine. Like we gonna dive deeper.
All right, Barry.
You right? You know who Barry? Well,
Barry White.
Yeah,
of course we know.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying? And see how once you start a deep voice, it make you want to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you understand what I'm. Yeah, you know. I don't know. Do youngsters still like deep voice men?
Hell yeah. Or
okay.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. Believe yes.
All right. Well,
you ever heard of Sharonis Jackson? He plays on Insecure as Dro, Afro-Latino dude. No.
I haven't.
Okay.
But I
You
like
watch
that his
Insecure?
last name is Jackson and my last name is Jackson. Yeah. Hey, and feeling ourselves. Yeah. So Sharon Jackson, what is that?
Sharonis. He just plays a character named Dro on the show Insecure, Issa Rae's television show.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
She's a Senegalese American woman, and she has a show called Insecure, and it's mostly black cast, almost completely black cast. So it's a really awesome show. It's a situational thing about life.
Situation, ding 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 ding. Situation and circumstance.
The key word.
What does this have to do with the deep voice?
Oh, Sharonis has a deep voice. That's it.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
I'm trying to tie this in.
Julius trying to come for me.
Not only is he coming for you, but did you notice when he said it, he tried to say it a little deeper.
Said, what's the deal with
what that have to do with the deep voice? He tried to right. Wow. So here's what we're gonna do. Wow, this is gonna be a great show. So we're gonna do what we always do. We're gonna go into a little bit of music, and then we're gonna come back in, and we're gonna dig into this thing called masculinity. And once again, you're here at kcbzradio.com. You can reach us at 502-509-KC.
Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
Yeah, so I can't just skip past this. That was James Brown and Pavarotti, and I'm being told that it was actually on Pavarotti's album, and so it's just crazy how beautiful that music is when we get together and combine some great artists like that. But yeah, so you just heard a little bit from Shane Horsberg or Horsberg. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct. And this was from TEDx, and I believe he's Australian, or I'm just saying that because all those voices sound alike. Australia, Austria, I don't know. But he says some real interesting things when we think about masculinity, and and I noticed that when I look at how when I think about how masculinity was presented to me, right? So what does that mean, presented? When I think about, okay, all those same things that we think about were said to little girls, the man has to come in and protect her from the spider, and it's boys don't cry, and these different things that we have there. I remember my sister had a diary, and I also share this with some of the kids I facilitate too. But I remember my sister had a diary, and she would write in that diary every time she had issues, right? And I'm sure there was probably some good stuff. Well, I know there was some good stuff in there too, because I was a little boy that was being nosy and read more of it than I should have. Okay, I admitted it. She didn't even know that. Wow. Hopefully, this is the one show she's not listening to. But it's old now, But one of the things it did for me was, like, I noticed that she had this outlet, right? And so I wanted that outlet. But in those days, most certainly a little boy, and even now, but a little boy wanting to write a diary, well, you would get called now you're a sissy or a punk or any of these other things. And so one of the things that I had to do is thank God for the 80s, because hip hop had emerged, and now I could write those things that I felt into my lyrics and my music.
I dig it.
And I feel like that's not only a beautiful outlet, but I think that when we think about certain artists that we're like, well, you didn't really do that, or you didn't do this. Sometimes we have artists that are writing things down, or so they don't do them, so that they can kind of deal with it. But I don't know. What do we think about what is masculine? He just described some things, but what is masculinity to either or both of you, Tiana and Julius?
You go first. I'll let the men speak.
That's right.
Oh,
it's a man's world.
Okay, now you gotta get out.
We did just listen
Talk
to
about
a
that's
man's
right.
world. That's very empowering to men.
But it ain't nothing without a woman. You can't forget that line. Okay, go ahead, Julius.
Anyway, man,
It's true though. It's true.
How I first saw masculinity was seeing my pops, and we never talked about that word ever. I just saw him as a male who took care of the family. And first things first, I don't think you could be a man and you don't take care of the family. Okay. So for me, it was no longer a male doing things. It was a man doing things. So when I saw this man taking care of the family, that was masculine.
Okay.
When I saw him protect us physically, but also mentally, like, hey, that's not a good idea. You'll be going through it if you do that. Or that was masculine, him being vulnerable, but still showing strength and opening up to me and my two sisters was masculine. Him saying the opposite of boys, be a boy. You're not a man yet. So cry. And when you are a man, still cry.
Solid.
So that was my version of, that was my definition. So we never, like, masculine. I asked him earlier today, like, how do you define masculinity? He was like, I don't know. I've never been presented that. Yeah. I'm like, wow. Which further shows that me and him never spoke about that. So I just perceived masculinity in him and the things that a man should be doing. So whether it be right or wrong, because he could have been a horrible father, but that would be my idea of masculinity. I'm glad, I'm grateful that he's a great father, but that my view of it is very skewed because I'm just looking at him and everything kind of trickles down after. So
he sounds like an amazing father.
I'm sitting there thinking the same thing.
He's cool.
I'm thinking like amazing father, and then not
model.
Traditional to what. And if I'm not mistaken, and you know, feel free to answer or not answer because some of this is a little more personal. But he's a little older, right? He's in his maybe 60s.
He's 66.
Yeah. And so when I hear that part of it, it really shocks me that it may feel like it shouldn't, but it really shocks me to come from that generation and have some of those things in a generation where a lot of men, masculinity didn't mean that you had to spend the time. It just meant that you took care of the household to make sure everybody could eat and put the food on the table. Yeah. And then you didn't really have to talk to the sons or the daughters or any of that. And so I'm not, obviously it existed,
I got
you know, but that shocks me a little bit more, that happened. Certainly mine was a little bit different. How about you, Tionne? How?
So my perception of masculinity growing up was kind of the opposite of Julius's, because I had a dad who was like 21 when he had me and my brother, and my dad wasn't raised by a father at all. He's raised by his grandmother because his mom was on drugs, and then his dad was just not around at all. I don't think my dad knew how to be a man. He didn't know how to conduct himself as a civil human being at first, I feel like, when he was younger, because he was kind of like in the streets a lot, and he was like just a tough dude, and that was at the time my idea of masculinity. It was just like this toughness and this almost like being a hateful person, because he was very aggressive and I would say hateful, but I think he's just was just angry at everything in his life and his dad not being present and his circumstances. But I mean, I wanted to be far away from him when I was a kid, because I was like, this guy's not a good guy. And I think that was my idea of masculinity, that men were kind of just like mean. And like, I think I was a little bit more on the shyer side when it came to men. But I think my perception of masculinity now has changed, and it has evolved as my mind has developed, because I mean, people are the way they are because of the things that they've gone through. And I think that was that's why my dad is the way that he is. But I think overall a man is someone who is just, I think it's just open. It's an open definition. I think it's kind of fluid. I mean, there's certain aspects like being respectful and in your relationships, whether you're in a relationship with a man or you're in a relationship with a woman, just being respectful and just being a good human being. I don't think anyone could ever take being a man away from you if you were born a man and you want to identify as a man. I don't know what that exactly looks like. I'm still kind of forming that. It's kind of like unlearning the things that I learned in the past of what a man was, and it was just a lot of aggression and hatefulness. I would say that was my perception, and I'm kind of trying to evolve out of that.
Yeah,
and that you bring up an interesting point when you say like you can't really take that away, because I believe feminism is close. I think feminism stripped men of their roles. I think that was
like the feminist movement.
The feminist movement, yeah, and I think that was very strategic. Sorry, this might be our last show. This might be my last show, but the feminist movement was very aimed at dismantling the family, and I'm speaking as a black man, so aimed at.
But what do you mean in a bad way? Dismantling?
Yeah, definitely in a bad way. I think it removed.
Okay, speak your piece.
It was very strategic.
Okay.
Like the black family, contrary to most popular belief, was intact until the civil rights movement. Okay. But then come these good old Democrats who every black person vote for because of JFK and Dr. King. They had their little whatever, and then you insert welfare, and then you insert the feminist movement, the second wave of feminist movement, and the Misses. Have you heard of the Misses magazine?
No.
What's the Mrs. magazine?
It's called Miss like Jet. It's a magazine that's called Mrs. Magazine, but it was actually funded by the CIA.
Interesting.
Anything funded by the CIA, you kind of gotta be wary of. That's one. Two, once this magazine hit the shelves, they put a black woman on the cover. Black people weren't writing anything in it, but they put a black woman on the cover, and it was very like, you don't need a man for this. Go do your thing. You should be the head of the household. You should do this. And it touched on topics that might not have even existed to certain people. But it was like, these black women are now no longer fighting the black people fight. Collectively, they're fighting the feminist fight, which I get the sentiment. But when you remove that black woman, strategically, when you tell these black women that, hey, disown that movement, that's fighting for the collective. Fight for yourself as a woman. That's aimed at dismantling the family.
Do you feel like there's, so I want to back up because you said that's pretty deep when what you said about feminists and this being something, and please correct me after this because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna mess it up, but something to the effect of that feminist that was set up to dismantle. What was it that you said right there?
As a black man, I'm gonna say it's dismantling the black family. It was geared, I believe, to just break the structure of family. I believe so, but again, focusing on black people in our community, it was definitely, which I don't believe black women should join this fight.
Shouldn't join the feminist fight.
No, not
but
at all.
Here's what's so strange about that is, and callers, listeners, if you're out there and you have a different version of this or you have some other information to add to this, please do call 502-509-5229. Again, that number is 502-509-5229. But my stuff is clanging and making noise. Let me tell you something. I feel like when I think about what I've learned, and I'm always nervous about sharing certain things I've learned, depending on where I learned it, right? Because depending on that professor or that teacher and how inclusive or oppressive their mindset might have been, has everything to do with how they taught whatever it was in some cases. And so I remember finding out about the Sandinistas. And these were a group of women, Hispanic, and then there was, I believe there was some African presence in that. And their loudest voice was from the black women, right? And it was one of those things where, okay, true enough, white men were very oppressive to white women or to any women. So it wasn't, if they were oppressive to white women, I think it goes without saying that they were oppressive to any other woman outside of that. And so there's this part of me that looks at it like, okay, well, white men were oppressive to their women, and then we're over here, and albeit that we were here before slave ships, so let's always make sure we get that shiitake right. Shiitake mushroom. I like shiitake mushrooms. Let's make sure we get that right. But having said that, we're here, and then we learned a lot of things, and I wish I could blame all of it on them. I wish I could say, well, white men taught us how to disrespect and mistreat our women. But there was some levels of that happening everywhere on this planet when it comes to women and men. The difference is that it was accepted in a way that was considered to be the thing to help move forward. It was like, okay, well, because I don't really know many. The only places I know where women weren't necessarily oppressed culturally way before our country became the United States is places like Alaska, and islanders, where when the men weren't just the ones that went hunting. The men went hunting, the women went hunting. The men clubbed a damn seal, the women clubbed a seal. the men are carrying the seal back, the women are carrying it back. That's kind of why they got the big old calves and stuff, because they was doing the same kind of work. I'm just saying, that's my theory. I don't have no proof behind that, but I think that's why their calves and stuff is just as big, them big Samoans and all of them, because, you know, they were doing the same things that the men were doing. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. What do you think that part of our when we think about masculinity, do you think that part of it is, how much of it is culture? Because I hear you saying, like, we're looking at some of the black plight of it, but how much of it is culture, generally speaking, with how men, and how much of it is just a masculine men thing all the way across the board?
As far as dismantling the family?
Any of that.
Well, I was just wanted to say that I know that when you talked about the dismantling of the black family and the black woman being on the cover of the magazine, and that making, they're basically promoting, like, independence, basically, like, you don't need a man. They're perpetuating that idea, like, I'm a strong black woman and I don't need no man. Do you think that is a bad thing, that they say that you can be independent, and you think that had so much influence that a black woman was like, oh, I don't need a man? Do you think that?
Definitely.
So you think it's the women that were claiming this sense of independence and dismantling the black home, the family, the nuclear family?
I believe it was, I'm not saying black women.
Yeah.
That alone.
Yeah.
Like, independence is bad. I'm not saying that. But when you're in a family,
yeah,
and you're spewing this rhetoric,
mm-hmm,
like, we live in a time where you can say, or you can have a child,
okay,
without a dad.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, girl, do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need him anyway. That's bad. To me, that's very detrimental to the family. You do. A child needs a dad, mm-hmm, and a mother. But to say universally, girl, do your thing with or without him. You don't need you better than him anyway. That type of independence, when a family, like, when a unit, there should never be a division.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the feminist movement definitely created a division within families. And then when you see all of these women, mainly black women, like, let me ask you, would you have a child without protection, without stability, without
I wouldn't. If I planned it, then no, I wouldn't have a child without protection and stability. But that doesn't mean to me that a man can provide me protection and stability.
No, definitely not.
I think it's definitely, like you said, I think it's helpful to have a father figure, because I've seen the root of a lot of people's issues stemming from not having a father figure, like my dad. So I can't even say that not having a father figure negatively affects your life, because I think that it definitely does. But I think it's possible to still grow up and have a healthy family without a father figure, but you just have to pick up the slack in other aspects of your life. And I feel like people who grew up without the father figure didn't have the slack picked up in other aspects. They didn't have that love and that care. And I think it takes a community, and they didn't have men and women in their lives to kind of teach them and raise them up.
Yeah, I agree.
Not necessarily a father in their household.
That's where I disagree, because I believe every problem that we see
It's the lack of fathers.
is a lack of a male, a lack of a man. And that goes from political.
You're giving yourself a lot of credit. So you're giving yourself a lot of credit?
Nah, I'm giving God a lot of credit. Like, God has a plan. It's the reason why Adam was first. And Adam had a purpose. Adam had a place. Then he had a person. Yeah, like, that was all after. So
men can have children.
Men can have children.
Because you need a woman to create life.
But see,
and it wouldn't be nothing.
But no, because that's the thing. That's the thing. When we talk about men, how important men are, we always have to be like, oh, but don't forget about the women. You need a woman. But when we talk about how strong and independent women are, we never be like, but you need a man. You need a father. Yeah, that never happened. So yeah. This show in particular is talking about men. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying men are very important. You need a man, and so it has nothing to downplay women at all. Okay. I would never speak down, especially black women, but to withdraw a male, you look politically, the world is where it's at because of a man. If you look at
it's where it's at. Even the most clucked up stuff that's happening is also because of a man.
That's my
As a
point. I'm
matter-
not saying no. That's
Yeah.
my point. So it's always
Everything.
a man. Like if you see the world in a horrible state, it's probably like you can probably like kind of pinpoint that to a group of men just not giving a damn. If you see it in a better state, you could probably be like, okay, men were probably in those families. The men who are like good, the men that we respect, they probably had a father. And I'm not saying 100%, but I'm saying the men that we appreciate and love probably had a really great father figure. I think that's more likely than
Well,
not.
which is actually different. Like having a great father figure doesn't mean you had a great father.
No, insert male. We're men.
No, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So,
I'm saying
yeah,
you still.
so-
It was a man still, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that to say you could have had an absolutely messed up father, and then there was some other man that had a certain skill set that you learned from, and it helped you become
Yeah, no doubt. I
a
agree.
better man. But then it's like, well, what is a better man? And then depending on how far back or how far forward you go, there's so much to that. Because again, we just talked about earlier how being a good man at some point meant making sure there was food on the table.
Yeah.
No discussion, no talking, no love. I'm not saying no love like he didn't love his children, but he didn't have to express that by doing different things with the child. All of that stuff actually happened a lot more when television came around, where you can see what that man was supposed to look like. So most of us that think about like playing catch with our child, throwing the ball with my son, that's being a man, that's doing that father thing. Well, that's because we saw that on something.
Leave
And
it
then
to
it
Beaver or
seemed,
something.
right? You went leave it to Beaver. That's how kids is made, leaving it to the Beaver. Well, oh, did I say that? But those things, you know. So when I think about that and fishing and all those things, that's kind of how that goes. But when we think about fatherhood, that is an aspect of man. Is it an aspect of masculinity?
Yeah.
Is it and that's my thing. Is it an aspect of masculinity? So here's what we'll do. We're gonna go into our next song. I'm getting a whole lot of messages. Some people are like, "That guy is negative," and other people are like, "This hurts my feelings. What are you guys talking about? This is not how a man's supposed to be." Somebody sent a text message to me talking about, it's. So we're gonna address all those things. Some of the callers and listeners and texters, your royal texters. We're gonna address some of those things when we come back. Here we are at Situation and Circumstance, KCBZRadio.com, KCBZRadio.com.
Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
Man, that's my guy Nipsey. Rest in peace. I think that's right, man. You have to have a balance. My dad, he didn't have a dad. To your point, he had a father figure, but his mom was like, boys don't cry, men don't cry, or you fall bleeding. What? Get it together.
Yeah. That don't hurt.
That don't hurt, yeah. And he grew up in a time where, like you pinpointed at the time, it would be very easy for him to raise kids the same way. However, my dad had me at 40. He already had 2 daughters. My dad was a pharmaceutical. He was in that business. Okay.
So you're selling.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, you just
Tekashi.
going, yeah.
Okay. Jesus.
Literally thinking it out. I'm sorry.
Wow. Yes,
He was
yeah.
a pharmaceutical.
Break it down.
Wow.
What?
Our dads must have went to the same medical school.
I believe so.
Alright, go.
School of Hard
Quite a
Knocks,
number
right?
of yeah, there was a whole medical practice for people who,
I can't believe you call me Tekashi. How dare you?
The point is, it was very, if you follow the trend, the equation, I could have seen how he would have, I would be a replica of that.
Yeah.
However, he did it very consciously. Like, he had me at 40. So at that point, that life was not behind him, but he was able to see things from the outside in. He was able to like muster those feelings, be like, I got to get over this. I can't be my dad to him, even if I'm in the house. So he was very conscious on how he spoke to me and how he spoke to my sister as well. Like I had to open the doors for women. Yeah. Like that was a rule. It was like you have to take out that trash. You have to let them walk in first. It was certain things that his dad never did because he never met him. So he was very like particular on how he raised me. And again, my idea of a man is skewed because that's all I have. I never thought about like, that's masculinity or is that not? So my idea is very skewed, but I believe he did the best that he could. And here you have me, who I have very strong opinions on feminism and all this crap. But
okay, come on.
Uh-oh.
He's shooting. He's shooting.
But yeah, so I think that Nipsey clip is you have to have a balance at the end of the day. You have to know your emotions and you have to have it in line. And you have to know your logic and you have to balance those two things out.
So let's do this. We have a call right now, and I really want Tionne to respond to that. Is why I'm doing that. But we have a call right now, so let's go with. Oh, did they caller? Caller, are you there? Annie, are you?
Yeah,
okay?
I'm here.
All right, caller. Welcome to Situation and Circumstance. What you have to say to us? Let us have it.
Whew, I could go on about this topic all day, but I'll try to keep it short. This is Hanok, by the way, if you guys won't recognize my voice.
What up?
But what up? So I agree for the most part with Julius on the idea of masculinity and specifically on the feminine movement. Where I feel like black women, actually all women.
Wait. You said you agree with the idea of masculinity, and I have to stop you there because I actually. What parts are you agreeing with when you say that you agree with him on the idea of masculinity?
Well, specifically, actually, you know what? You're right. I probably shouldn't have said that. I agree with him on the facts of how the family structure was purposely broken through feminism, specifically towards the black family. So that's the part that I'm agreeing with Julius.
Amen.
Yeah.
Oh, come on now. Come on now. Okay, let me say this. I'm trying to wait on Tionne, but I'm gonna say this.
Yeah.
Let me see. That's that's bull spit. Let me tell you why. Okay. Because of this. If you break down aspects of the feminist movement, then yeah, any movement you have, there's some things that you can point out that may not be what they should be, right? Or they can be some improvements or better ways of doing it. But that's with any movement, because in the beginning, every part of the movement is stemming from the passion about what's happening that is oppressing you. And so if it's coming from that level, there's going to be some things that happen because anybody who's oppressed is fighting a battle that is morphing while fighting it. So every woman on the planet, just about like, and mind you, I feel very. I want to say I don't agree with everything that has happened as a result, but it was necessary because of what has been happening to women, regardless of the color.
Yeah,
I don't say regardless of the color to make one seem worse or better than the other, but they've been through some stuff, man. So
yeah.
So when we say that the feminist movement is to deconstruct or stop or dismantle in that part of it, do I believe there's somebody out there that uses anything they can to dismantle? Yes, but do I believe that that it is an accurate statement to say that the feminist movement itself is responsible for dismantling or created to dismantle? I don't know. Welfare did that better than any feminist movement.
Well, welfare is a piece of that,
right? You couldn't have,
but it all ties in. But let me. What I'm trying to say really is, feminism itself is not bad. But black women and other women are being duped into thinking they're going to be protected under feminism when they're just being used for numbers for white women. Hence, every time a black woman or any other race woman has something where police is killing them or they're getting beat, where are the feminists protecting them in those moments? They
That's
just
what
need
we
them for
always
numbers.
did. That's what we do. When they didn't care about crack until they got in the white neighborhood, right? So we had to make sure it got in the white neighborhood so they could care about how the effects of crack was. So if black women got to compile a bunch of white women to give a damn about something too, so that you give a damn about me, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like there's two sides of feminism. If you've heard of the term white feminism, there's a feminism that doesn't protect black women, but there also is a very inclusive feminist movement that includes all women of color. And I don't think that the feminist movement, I don't agree with that. It single-handedly dismantled the black community. I think there's other aspects like mental health. I think that there's so much more to that.
Financial literacy.
Yeah.
Let me finish my statement as to what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the point I'm trying to make is I believe that the idea of feminism and women wanting equal rights, I'm not against that. But what I'm saying is that the white women, the foundation of feminism started with white women, specifically for white women. And they included black women simply for numbers. The same way when the South needed slaves for population votes, they did 3/5, not because they thought they were treating them better as human, but they needed them as numbers. So they're literally being used. I don't mind the idea of liberating black women, but I just want to let them know these white women in this feminist movement is not fighting for you. They never will. They never have.
You don't think that has evolved since then, though? You think that just because it started that way, it's ending that way? You don't think the process has evolved? Because that was a different time.
Nah, see, this is the thing. That's how the idea white supremacy is a flawless system. So the belief that they're going to change suddenly and think that you're in here, sisterhood. No. The system was made specifically to work against you, and it's working flawlessly. So I don't mind the idea of feminism and black women doing their own thing to protect themselves and have rights for themselves. But don't be duped by this game. History is the best teacher. We've seen it in the past, happening again. That's my thing. And then one more thing that I want to touch before I get off.
Preach.
I know you said you had comments about people saying that.
Somebody loves you, Hannah.
So I know you had some people texting you talking about their feelings were hurt, but we as a whole need to stop personalizing these things. It's not about you or your fucking feelings, no disrespect. But to get better as a community as a whole, we have to have these discussions. It's not about you. Don't personalize this. Let's get better. Let's move on. Let's grow. That's it.
Well, thank you. When you call again, and we certainly hope that you do, because you always bless us with some, if nothing else, something interesting to think about. When you call next time, let's make sure we watch those F-bombs.
Yeah, bro.
But other than that, hey, we always appreciate you checking in the situation and circumstances, and certainly, Uhuru, you have a beautiful rest of your night. And keep listening, because we're not done with you and with this.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Likewise, appreciate that.
So I tell you what. Oh, boy. Wow. Oh, this is going on.
I feel like this should be the new topic.
Right.
Is feminism dismantling the community?
Dismantling the... but...
I stand my ground.
Masculinity... That's what we're talking about, right? But we're talking about a lot of stuff. But masculinity, and we're gonna take another call. But masculinity, I want to say really quickly, when we think about masculinity, I want us to think about whose version of what masculinity are you, or are we supposed to astute to? Whose version of what masculinity is, and then which part of it is just the nature of things. This is your nature. You're a man, you're a woman, and then what does even that mean? And so we're going to go into this next call. Caller, you're on Situation and Circumstances. Tell us what you want to say.
Hey guys, I really like this topic for this show, but I kind of feel like it got off topic. So I wanted to repose the question that the host asked about how masculinity it plays into other cultures, if you know about that, and also talk about masculinity in yours, but outside of your own father. Like, I'm just curious to hear about that.
Thank you for that, and I 100% agree that we can, and I think our previous caller hit on that a little bit, in that, you know, when we're taking it personal. But I think that there's a couple of things. So we can study and find out some things about men, and then we can also, for me, experiential learning is one of the best kinds. And so when I look at, so for instance, I'm going to go personal, because I look at my father being someone who wasn't a great moral model of what a father should look like. As a result of that, I became a great father, because I everything that I felt like should have happened then, I decided to do it. Then one day, and he was very abusive, and you know, he was a great uncle, he was a great cousin, he was a great friend, but he was a terrible father, and he was and these other things he was just quite terrible at. And I remember how I forgave my father for all the things even he did to me. The way I forgave him, and I'm going to loop this in and tie this into what you're saying. One of the things my father said was, he said, and forgive me, family, if this is a little too deep for any of my family that may be listening, but you'll have to get over it and understand the truth is going to come out. But my father said he used to get hit with shovel handles from his father. Now, anybody born in the 70s, they know that we were that generation that we got whipped with switches, which was like a thin whip, if you really look at it, with belts and race car tracks and all kind of shit. And that wasn't, all kind of shiitake mushrooms. And that wasn't considered abuse at the time, right? And so the reason I'm saying this is I don't want you to think, well, what was wrong with your dad that he thought he should have been, that he was getting hit with shovel handles? Well, he said, I was hit with shovel handles, and maybe if I had been hit with them more, I would have turned out to be a better man. This is what he said. This is what he told to me. This allowed me to forgive him. You know why? Because he grew up in a generation of people. He wasn't the first one to get hit with a shovel handle. Like I wasn't the only or first one to get whipped by an extension cord. Right? And so I'm saying those things to say that the level of what he received, that was his teacher for showing him what what he thought a man was supposed to look like, came from someone who did know what a man was supposed to look like, if we consider that a man is supposed to take care of the family, pay for everything, and that's it. And so I agree with you in that we need to circle back around to what is masculinity. I agree with when we look at like aggression. That's one of the things Tionne had mentioned way earlier. Aggression is one of those things that men associate with being a man, is aggression. But the thing about it is, if aggression is one of those things that make you more masculine, but it's also the thing that hurts you and harms you, though, right? Because if you're aggressive, right, then how much of that is your nature as a man to just go around being aggressive? And how much of that is society and taught? Caller?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I agree. I just, only because my own feelings are, I feel like that masculinity and then that type of aggression is pushed on different colors of men than it is as opposed to other colors. So I didn't know if you guys agreed with that, or just because from what I've noticed, even the simplest, the simplest mannerisms that I wouldn't even think twice about, I noticed that other guys would never think twice about it, but the black man does. If that makes sense.
It does make sense, but it also, it not only does it make sense, but historically, black men and women were raised by black women. Because if the man was always making sure that the house was taken care of, and he wasn't taking care of any of the emotional responsibility, then we were being all raised by women. Right?
I agree.
Yeah. And then when we look at black people in general, or specifically, that happened enormously. Mm-hmm. And then it also feeds back to, don't make me do it, Julius. Don't make me say Willie Lynch files. Don't make me say separate the young black male from the old black male. Teach the woman to be independent and teach the male to be dependent. Right? And so some of this is formula. Some of this was imposed on us and inflicted on us specifically. Yeah. Some of it's that. Some of it we took and run with it. But I also don't want to ignore that we came from a country prior to entering this one. We came from a country where we didn't necessarily treat all the women there great. Let's not forget that. I'm not taking away from how we loved our queens, real queens. I don't mean like other ones are fake. I mean, we're black Americans, so all black women are queens. But I'm talking about the Queen Isis and the queens. So we were there celebrating them, right? But that didn't mean that in our own households, ISIS is running things. But then back at Mr. Williams' house, it wouldn't have been Williams if we was in Africa. Back in Mbutu's house, right? He ruled with iron fist, and that was okay too, even under ISIS rule, even under some of our queens' rule. And then when we come over here, let me tell you something that some of us don't know, and you might, because you sound like you got it. Did you know that it was okay to beat a woman? The rule of thumb is a phrase that comes from it being okay to beat a woman with anything as long as it wasn't thicker than your thumb. Mm-hmm. We didn't make that up, but we got trained and tricked into that. And then we start doing it. Mm. So some of these things that are personal, they matter. Because for some of us, it's all we have. Because even when we look up the history of the things, we still are going to relate more to the experiential learning that we received and what we saw in our men. And I love you for calling, because again, what is masculinity? Mm-hmm. What is it? Yeah.
Amongst all cultures, yeah.
I'm a tough guy. I'm just going to say that. I'm a tough guy. I got a ghetto report card as well as I have higher learning. And one of the things I know is that sensitivity, when a man is sensitive, other than that woman that is attracted to a sensitive man, amongst his peers and amongst others, he is considered softer because of his sensitivity. Especially if you're in the streets, meaning in the hood or that sensitivity could kill you, literally and physically. So then it becomes this thing, well, is that part of being a man, is not being sensitive? What level of sensitivity is okay for you and you still be a man after that level of sensitivity?
Gotta have that balance.
And who determines that balance?
You have to.
But the balance is subjective. It's for yourself.
Yeah. No, I agree. The balance is for yourself. But we about to go to a track. About to go to a song real quickly.
And we're going to continue talking about this. And caller, what's your name? If you don't have to tell us if you don't want to, but if you want to, tell us. Who is this?
Tasha. I'm Tasha.
All right. Wait, check it out. We appreciate your call here at Situation and Circumstance. Please don't let this be the last time we hear your voice, because that's what we want. Text us, email, Zoot Skeet, any of that. Somebody going to hit me up. What is Zoot Skeet? Yeah. Y'all the one behind time. You better get on that Zoot Skeet. Look, I didn't even know what it is. Wow. Once again, we're at KC.
Log on to kcbzradio.com and check the schedule for Situation and Circumstance Live, complete with music, live phone call access, and additional audio and programming. Anthony and TBT would love for you to be a part of the live broadcast and recording of Situation and Circumstance at kcbzradio.com.
Welcome back to Situation and Circumstance, and we are all over the place with this topic of masculinity and gender roles and all these things. And I want to, before we're gonna in a moment we're gonna move on to Tiana, and then we're gonna talk to one of our callers. I want to say before we talk to you, caller, that our intention here is to just kind of shed some light on masculinity and how that plays its role in men in general. And occasionally, of course, well, sometimes when we think about how that plays its part, sometimes it is going to be reflected as that culture that someone's perspectively from, because it might look different depending on what culture you are. So let's just go into our next caller. Thank you for calling Situation and Circumstance. Caller, you say what? Caller?
Oh, so I wanted to say, this is Ilarion, another Classiq ACE entertainer, Anthony's son. I just wanted to call and talk about the whole masculinity thing. I had a different agenda, but after hearing the podcast and whatnot, I wanted to say that masculinity, such as, femininity, is very subjective. And it's kind of like humor. Humor is very subjective. It may be funny to others or it may not, but that doesn't take away from it being funny. It's just, a very different caliber of funniness into which other people may not understand. Hence why me as a non-binary person, sometimes there is the question of he or she or them, they, it, or is.
Okay, I'm sorry. When you say non-binary, because some of our callers or some of our listeners might not know what non-binary means. Can you explain what that means before you continue, please?
Yes, of course. Non-binary means that you're not exclusively masculine and you are also not exclusively feminine. You don't identify as, you're not exclusively one or the other. But if somebody were to say that you are one, you're not going to be upset because you're both, but you're also neither.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which has been going on a lot in pop culture recently, with a lot of, little boys with the shooting and, not knowing how they feel, and their parents disregard them and, put them off like they're pawns in a game, but what it is it's not that we don't know who we are. It's just we know who we are, but we have to explain to others who we are so that way they could understand. But a lot of people don't want to understand, and that's where the difference lies. Some people want to understand where we're coming from, hence why they ask questions. And other folks may ask questions just because, out of nonsensory.
Gotcha. Questions for anybody have a question for Mr. Ilarion? Did I say that right?
Yep, you did.
All right.
So what does masculinity mean to you for someone who's non-binary?
Masculinity means to me whatever they feel means to them. And now let me extrapolate. By that I mean,
extrapolate.
If somebody feels as though they want to do whatever they feel is masculine, then to them that's masculine.
Yeah.
So it could be, going out and walking the dog, but they're not going to pick up the poop. Well, they might want somebody else to do it. That's them being masculine. Whatever their perception of masculinity is, then they are masculine. But one thing that I don't, and I'm going to say this one more time, is I don't feel like masculinity comes from within, because masculinity is what you exude to the outside perspective.
So more of nurture for you.
Exactly.
As opposed to nature. And then that's where, for me, that's where it gets a little tricky. Because, so for example, all over the world, men cheat. I'm not saying that all over the world women don't cheat, so I don't want you to be over there like, yeah, little do he know, we be doing just as much cheating. But what I am saying is that it seems to be an overwhelming lopsidedness to who does more, right? Men kind of seem to, it looks like we step out more. But I'm saying across cultures, right? And so for me, and I remember the younger me, so when I say the younger me, I mean like when I was, I don't know, in my late teens, for me, I kind of felt like a lion, right? I felt like a lion was the king and he had a pride. I'm just being honest. I felt like, well, if we're here to procreate, and that's what we're here for in terms of nature, because the same way a man can't have a baby, a woman can't inseminate herself without finding the semen. See how I did there? If I would have just said a woman can't inseminate herself, they can.
That was good. But
they
you
can.
know,
But hold
procreatorianism
on.
is a lot different.
You said what?
Procreatorianism is a lot different.
Well, but here's what I still say. Regardless, it's still the same point of that a man, and this is, I'm not even talking about religious. I'm just talking about a man all over this planet procreates, cheats, goes out of it, has more than one woman, more often than the reverse of that, where a woman is out and she has several men. I'm not just talking about America. I'm just saying across the globe. And I'm saying the fact that is, the point that I'm making is if that's across the globe and every culture has that piece inside of them, or that every race or so-called race has that piece where men are doing that, then is there a part of that that's nature?
I don't know if it is nature.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'm just saying I don't know if it's nature. I think that there's just something in common amongst all the societies across the world that men have been kind of raised to dominate, and I do believe that scientifically men are stronger, and so that was just determined back in the day, like
physically stronger.
Physically stronger. So it was like, okay, so it was an observation.
It's been one of those things.
Yeah.
Since before
they kind of built it up to be that.
Oh no, that's a lie. Between 1767, men have, I'm doing air quotes, but you can't see it. They have been stronger than women. And that may be scientifical, but at the same time, we have progressed a lot more than that. So to keep it modern, you know, we can do just as much as men can do, and sometimes we could do it better.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. So men tend to, boys, right? Let's go with boys. Boys tend to, and obviously not every boy, but so I'm speaking more collectively, not individually. And boys tend to, I don't know, wrestle a lot. I don't know, spit, catch the lizard.
Well, that's nurture.
So what I'm wondering
is nurture. That's what they do.
Huh? Say again?
What makes you think that that's just what they do? Like,
because when I look at, and again, I haven't been in, as I'm assuming many of us have not been to all of these different countries, and even if we have we been in all these countries, and do we know enough about those countries and what was happening to their kids at the time? But what I'm generally seeing, and I understand that society influences lots of things. So a boy, I don't feel like a boy is more of a boy because he chose blue over pink. That's not my thing. But I do believe that there is a natural part of the testosterone that is included in his makeup that causes him to react towards things and demonstrate certain things as a direct result of that, versus estrogen being in women and girls, and how that works.
I think that the hormones play a more insignificant role than what people make it out to be.
And how so?
I just think that
it's very much more insignificant than what a lot of people think that, you know, estrogen is mainly for women and testosterone is mainly for men. But little do people know that there are both within both sexes.
Yeah, there's definitely both.
Certainly, but not in
one,
equal amounts.
It doesn't mean that one is more predominant in the other, because there's people out here with PCOSD and, you know, PCOS and all that. You know, it's basically, you know, how you deal with it and what you choose to deal with it and how you're going to go about it.
Julius, what do you say?
I don't have anything to say.
Well, I stand by that. I think the hormones definitely plays a role in human behavior, male and female. But I think that society kind of builds upon that and boosts that. Like, I think that men can be naturally aggressive, but so can women. And I just think it's just all about this
right.
How you're raised. I think there's I forgot what country it is where men can hold hands. Like, if they're friends, they can hold hands and walk down the street and it's all good. But if you see two men holding hands here in America, that might be like, oh, you might be, they just assume things about you. So I think that a lot of anything in regards to behavior, I think mostly is nurture based versus
I agree
hormone
with you,
based.
Julianne, because there's certain times to where, you know, two girls can hold hands and nobody thinks anything of it, right? I mean, well, you know, some people think anything of it, but if you see two men holding hands, they automatically assume, oh, they're gay, or they are this way, or they feel this way towards each other. But if you see two women holding hands, it's a lot different because of, you know, they have painted this negative connotation and this narrative that it's only right for women to do certain things and not for men, whether they're non-binary or not.
So how does attraction play a role in that? I actually agree with that, but I also feel like, or I'm curious about how does sexuality and all that play a role in that? Because I feel like if so, for instance, a woman is attracted to a man who is, let's say the particular women that are attracted to this style. So I'm not saying all women are, but let's say a woman who's attracted to a man who has some of these aspects that we attribute to masculinity and being a man, right? So not just the ones of like, oh, he has a job and he's paying the bills, which even that part of it, right, is something that we could talk about, right? How does that make you more masculine? Right. Because you can take care of the bills and all of that. But for those women who,
like we said,
well, hold on, because I haven't asked the question yet. For those women who find it more attractive to be with a man who they consider a manly man, right? So we know what we think that means, right? A manly man, somebody who has this bravado and this stature, and I'm looking at Tiana across over here, and she's like, yeah, that's me.
I can say I fall victim to being more attracted to masculine features, and honestly,
what does that mean?
Okay, I was going to say, it's funny because I am attracted to men and women, and I am attracted to, I would say I'm attracted to women who appear to okay, so this is where I have to assign features to masculine features. Yeah, quote unquote masculine features, but not necessarily women who dress in clothes that people make for men. I am attracted to women who dress in clothes that are made for women, but don't behave super feminine.
But that is so unfair. When we say that when men who dress in masculine, you said you were attracted. I heard the first part.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I fall victim to the
you said that.
Yeah, and that's all nurture. I think that I fall victim to what masculinity means to me. Like I had an ex-boyfriend who to me behaved more feminine, and it wasn't something that I personally was attracted to. And that's all society. I don't believe I think it's societally taught to me in my head that there is a way to act as a man. And so
and I've had this this man, which my dad knows about. Yes, I'm putting it on blast. I was dating this man to where because I dress up. I'm a drag queen.
Okay.
And so I would dress up and look very much effeminate. And then when all of the clothes came off, then he was like, "Oh, I don't find you attractive."
Well, boy,
so then I
bye.
had to let him go.
Tell him bye.
Because I was like, boy, bye. Because
Yeah,
I'm
seriously.
still the same person.
Yeah.
Regardless. And, you know, it's very hard being non-binary, especially with people that don't understand the quarrels and qualms that come with being binary. I know that might be a little difficult, hence why I don't get mad at people for not understanding, because if they don't understand, then they just don't understand. So I would, you know, try to, you know, illuminate their minds and make sure that they do understand. And if they further don't, then, I mean, I did everything I could.
True. Well, to touch back on my point as far as being attracted to men and women who they kind of both have to have similar characteristics of, and I say masculinity because it's lack of a better word. Like I've been kind of raised to assign certain characteristics to that word, masculinity. And if there was another word for it, I would use that other word because I'm looking for those features in both men and women. I'm not coming to a man and saying this is how a man should behave, and coming to a woman saying this is how a woman should behave, and I'm coming to both of them and I'm assigning one set of characteristics to both sides.
To you? Define masculinity.
Well, earlier I defined masculinity as if whatever you define it as, and if you are a person that considers yourself masculine, then you are masculine. But in this case, I'm saying masculinity because there's no other word for the set of characteristics that I'm looking for, that I'm describing. If the word was purple, then I would say I'm looking for purple men and women, but there's not a word for it.
What about this particular man that attracted you? Because you said masculine. So what were those things that were masculine?
My ex,
you said he was.
Well, I just prefer people who are just assertive and dominant in anything that they do. And I feel like that, because that has been assigned in my head to masculinity.
Women can be that as well.
Exactly, and that's why I'm attracted to that in women as well.
That's why it's not a masculinity trait. It's just a trait that they are told is masculine.
What is a masculinity trait to you?
There is
just
no
give me one.
Masculinity.
Traditionally,
there's no masculinity traits. It's because it's not. It's substantial. What you feel like may be masculine is what you guys feel is masculine. We cannot tell you if that's masculine or not.
But you know, here's my problem with that. My problem with that is that if I regardless of so here's what we do here, and not just here, other countries too, but certainly we're in this country right now. So let's talk about America. So what we do here is, if someone's acting a certain set of ways, to Tionne's fact, if someone's acting a certain set of ways, then because of the nurture or societal, what we were being told, then we assign masculinity or femininity to it, right?
Yes.
Now, here's my thing. Right. But here's my thing. There are places where they do documentaries where they aren't influenced yet. Like right now they might be, but they weren't influenced or haven't been influenced by this social construct, specifically the one that we have in America. So for instance, let's say that when a woman walks, let's just say for sake of argument, when a woman walks, she has a certain walk that appears more, and before you guys even interrupt me, I'm going to say the word, that appears more feminine, right? Don't ask me, well, what does that mean?
About that switch.
That switch, right? That's walking more like that. There's a subtle, sexy type of,
because of the way your body's built, though.
Okay, but watch this.
The hips.
Now, somebody could say, well, that's what I think, right? It's just the hips. That's what it is. But someone could argue, okay, well, that's just a social construct. We're saying that if you walk like this, it's more feminine or more masculine. But if you're somewhere in a country where you haven't been influenced by that and you still are walking those ways, then my opinion is that it is something that has more to do with masculinity and femininity, because you're walking that way and you haven't been influenced by society and all of that. You're somewhere in a remote area where you have none of those influences, yet I can watch you walk. You guys could both be, a male and a female can be fully clothed, and I can watch them walk, and I can see one is walking more feminine.
Heard any of those things, then it would not be considered masculine or feminine.
So then what I'm saying by that is that,
but we're speaking upon where we do live at.
No, we're not, because
So
we're
walking
worldwide.
those
We're
ways
worldwide.
is-
And so the reason I'm bringing that to attention is not just because we're worldwide, but I'm also saying that to say that there absolutely is a such thing as masculinity and femininity.
Yeah.
There is.
Of course,
I think
there
the
is.
words
There
is
is.
the words themselves are triggering.
Of course.
But I think that there is a basic set of characteristics that you can apply to a woman and a basic set of characteristics that you can apply to a man.
And I think
that
that's our
the
problem.
masculine and feminine
What are
labels
those?
kind of get us shook up. And I
Say
think
that
that's-
again, because I interrupted.
The
rudely.
masculine and feminine label gets us shook up, and that's when it becomes tough because the lines kind of have been blurred.
I agree with that. They have definitely.
Because, you know, if
been
somebody
blurred.
says cross over the line, but they're like, well, the line has been blurred, well, then
It's been
there
blurred.
is there.
It's been blurred, but I don't feel like I see blurry. So although the line is blurred, I feel like the line itself is blurred. I don't feel like my vision is.
You can see clearly now the line is blurred.
I can't stand you.
Apparently. Yeah, y'all didn't know I could sing that on the podcast.
Thank you for that.
Well, thank you for calling in. Tell us your name and where you're calling from, if you'd like to.
My name is Ilarion Valentine. I am ACE, another classic entertainer, Anthony's son. And hopefully I hear from you guys again. You can follow me on Instagram at Ilarion Valentine.
Well, thank you, son, for calling in. I love you. See you at another
too,
time.
Dad.
And we're gonna keep this going. If you hadn't noticed, my son is a lot like me. He's just gonna interrupt you and keep going and keep it moving.
I didn't notice.
Once again, we're here at KCBZRadio.com, where we talk about situation and circumstance. Are we still online? Oh, I didn't know. I heard some noise. It sounded like boodle-loop, and I was
That was the
like,
end
I
of
don't
the
even
phone
know if
call.
you're
That's
listening.
y'all gotta get it together. Y'all don't know what
Right.
the difference between it's time for the song and it's time for
Well, we heard a
no.
it was a special noise. I don't know if you heard that, caller.
Okay,
It's a special
I just-
noise, but
Wait, can we?
yes.
Okay,
please.
I just want to ask you because you said that you agree with that there's a basic set of characteristics that you can find in a man as far as nature goes.
Yes.
And a basic set of characteristics that you find in a woman as far as nature goes.
Right.
And then when you put masculinity and femininity into the context, that definitely is a thing, right?
Right.
Okay, so what does that mean to you? What do you mean by that exactly? Because I agree with you, I think, but I want to make sure.
You want to make
I
sure
want to make
you
sure I
agree?
agree with you. Basically, yeah. I want you to explain.
I want to agree, but I just want to be sure.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's certainly there's masculinity, there's femininity. Because
Just say what's on your
how
mind.
do I want to say this? There is, and we didn't even, Julius, we didn't even get to go where I was going to hope we got to get to. Like, oh, men got to do this and buy the bracelets on Valentine's, and
Yeah.
I
Propose
wanted to, you know, I wanted to go so
Well, y'all
many of
could have
those
did that.
places.
I came with the heat for the women episode. I was like, women, this, and this. Y'all didn't come with the heat.
Oh shoot!
I'm sorry. Y'all got time.
It's all of our show. We can come back to it.
True that.
On another date.
True that.
You know.
So are we
So-
saying
so
masculinity is not
I-
a thing?
I
that
think that-
No, I think we are saying it's.
We're
Or
refusing-
I'm saying it's a
We're
thing.
saying
So
it-
I think we are
we
saying
can't
it's a
define
thing.
it?
It's hard when you put a label on anything because even when I say I like men and women, people are like, oh, well, that makes you bisexual. And I'm just like, that's a label. And I'm just like, that is not exactly how I feel. I just feel like I'm a person that can be attracted to all types of people. And so when we put a label like the label masculinity and femininity, because people have used it to assign it to all kinds of things and have made it a negative thing, it becomes kind of tough.
Well,
I feel like it depends on how you define it, I guess.
Watch this.
So is it innate?
Is it?
What is it?
Is it innate? It's a behavior. It's a trait. It's how you act, right?
Yeah,
It's
but
how
who-
you
but
perform.
there's like the definition of masculinity has been skewed, and it's like, what
hasn't
is
been.
it? Like, if
we
you are able,
made it harder than what it is, man.
That's what I'm saying too.
And
if
it's not that
if you
hard.
clearly define what masculinity is, and it matches up to those basic
let's look at
traits,
the definition.
if it matches up to those basic traits
So
of
we
what
can't
a
look at the
man
definition.
what a man is by nature, then yes, that is masculinity. But because we assign things like liking blue, liking to wrestle, liking to spit as masculinity, those things to me aren't masculinity, because I'm masculine then, because I like to wrestle, I like to throw a football. Like,
and some will perceive you that way. Some will perceive you that way. That's not
and levels of emotion, I believe, is like I don't believe we can define it in a way that will blanket statement all of it.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there are attributes that we can connect to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those attributes, time to time, some of them will be collective. And collective doesn't mean all, it just means the majority. And some of those will be individual, right? And so I do believe that, for instance, when we look at, and the reason I keep bringing up sensitivity is because I think it's one of those huge markers for this kind of thing. Not necessarily that you have sensitivity, but how you express sensitivity, how you be with that sensitivity, right? And so I do believe, so when I think about my wife, if my wife sees a man cry on TV and he's crying about his son was taken away or something like that, that's real strong masculine. But let's say, I don't know, he didn't get the question right and he starts crying. She can be like, stop being a punk.
Well, that's what anybody do.
No.
I think.
Well,
you're talking about your wife specifically, yeah.
No, well, not necessarily just her, but I would say that generally speaking, when I think about the women that I've grown up around,
yeah.
And a lot of that is, like you said, a lot of that's societal and nurture and that kind of thing. But I think that there's parts of that again, if we travel the world, we travel the globe, that we see that there are instances of similarities in certain actions. So if we look at how 15-year-old boys and girls are acting all over the world, well, yeah, all of that's going to have something to do with society too. But I feel like if there's something common throughout the thread if there's a thread throughout all of them that seems to go a certain way, then I still wouldn't say that absolutely qualifies this as a masculine or feminine trait, but I would believe that it is something that supports it enough more so than just a society thing or nurture thing, that supports it as more of a natural thing. Okay. If that can happen.
Mm-hmm. So then a better conversation maybe that can, because I think when we think of masculine, we're thinking of that it has to be exclusive to men, and I think that's where our downfall is.
Well, it's
I agree with
men.
I agree with that.
Do you think that the masculinity comes from men? Like the characteristics come from
it depends
like,
on what we
all of them.
Of course, we're not talking like 100%. Of course not. We're talking about generally speaking. You say collectively, not everybody, but the majority. If something, right? Like this is not that. This is not
she
science.
Asked the question: Does masculinity come from men? And I believe masculinity comes from whoever has enough masculinity. And I believe that men are made biologically in a way that masculinity may ooze a little bit that complements them. However, that only makes sense if we can determine what masculinity is.
We don't have like that. That's what I'm saying. Like we need to have. I think I can agree with masculinity being exclusive to men if we determine that if we determine a set of traits, and these traits match everything, and they are exclusive to men.
A female ram, don't run around the damn forest bumping her head with another female ram.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a reason why them rams that got the horns. Why they keep hitting each other in the head. And every animal that you see out there in this wild kingdom has something that happens a little bit differently, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more intentional when it is the male. That's not to say because the black widow eat the damn man. She just eat him up after he has sex with her. That spider just eats him up. But generally, but you know what a spider ain't? A mammal. Yeah. And when we look at mammals, which we are, the majority of the mammals, that male romps, roams, busts heads, protects the pride, which sounds like, oh, protect the pride. Well, that sounds like making sure everything's good at home, making sure they're protected. So there's certainly, to me, this level of now.
I think that's kind of we are trying to figure out what that means to us as human beings. Because because if you study women, they play their role and men play their role.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's important.
Oh, he's so masculine.
He enunciated every part of that word.
He's so
because we complicate things.
I think that we definitely complicated the definitions of masculine and feminine. I think
we made us think we had to be worse than what we are. So men have taken it further than we needed to.
No doubt.
And in the process of taking it too far, we've lost some of the things that we should keep and that are very important.
No doubt.
Like being emotionally sound and there for somebody.
Because that can be masculine.
It can be masculine. So there's a lot of those things that we have done. But to suggest that, mind you, and I'm not saying someone here suggested it, but to suggest that when we look at masculinity and femininity, that there's no such thing or there's no this, it's to me, that part of it's not true.
Yeah.
There is, and unless we said it wasn't true just because someone who understood it a little bit differently has written it in a Webster book and said this means masculine and this means feminine. Well, we know that that's happened throughout life. Somebody has determined what they thought masculinity and femininity was. So that's why I didn't want you to look it up and describe it.
No.
Because it's still based off of what someone has determined that to be. Some of those might be actual doctors and scientists that studied the cells and everything to say that this is that, but we don't need to do all of that.
I think we do.
know that, well, we could study the cells, but we know that there's a difference between a man and a woman. Now, I know that's not, what'd you say, there's masculinity and femininity, and then you told me this a while back, and then there's not just the gender, there's the sex, right?
Sex, gender.
And so, do I believe that you can have you can have a cucumber and oranges and have whatever definition of femininity is, and you could have a kumquat and have a lot more of the harsh or rougher.
I don't know, man.
Right? You can do that, but generally speaking, there's a difference, and there's a difference for a reason. Okay, look.
And that is not a negative thing, but I think that that's the issue. We're overcomplicating these definitions, and we're turning them into negative things. And like, there's a set of behaviors that's healthy for any human being, period. But we generally assign the more healthier traits to a woman and the more harsher traits to a man.
That's true. And then men have to sit there and try to sometimes live up to them harsher ones that they don't even appreciate sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes men gotta be what they're not. I agree.
Not.
Like my older brother, he's in the Army now. He's a little timid. I always used to fight for him all day, every day growing up. I used to throw hands for him. And so
you look like you used to throw hands for quite a number of people.
No, I really did. And then even up until high school, I stopped fighting in high school, but he's a tall dude. He would try to present himself as this big masculine dude that he's down for the fight, and he would fight when he had to, but little do people know, back in the day I was throwing hands for him, but no one would think that because it's not a feminine thing for a skinny little girl to do, to be throwing hands. But I was really out here.
Oh, wow.
Bashing in heads.
Thank you so much for being here, Tiana. Julius, I love you, son. Alarion. Oh, he gonna get me if I say it the wrong way. Alarion, thank you for calling in as well. And either way, what I will say is I didn't raise my sons necessarily to be men. I raised them to be good human beings who happen to be men. Mm-hmm. And as always, we promise our listeners that we will continue to make beautiful mistakes. We embrace the opportunity afforded by our ancestors to speak, whether right or wrong, weak or strong. We be learning humans, working on liberation and scaffolding a meaningful and fair existence for all. Till the next time, my natchez.
Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance?
and race mixes. Matrix, kill the witches. 3 digits, made of 6s. KKK or white privilege. Old spirits, blood riches. Real hatred, fake forgiveness. Skinny image, fat problems. I don't really know how we solve them. Gods made us, kings gave us. 2 enslavers, 2 enslavers. Castaways on railways. Underground dark web pages. Marvel heroes, connect the zeros. Connect the pharaohs, bone marrow. Egyptian princes, dark and ancient. Preserve the patience, black and Haitian. White and Asian, British coaches. Eat crustaceans, ocean roaches. Illuminati, inject the bodies. GMOs, drug hobbies. Aboriginal, Pan-African, old biblical. Reincarnation, hip-hop playlists, vocal rangers. Sexist wages, sex changes. The game of life, bullets fly. Ruin nights, players clueless. Kids' rights, human rights. Humans fight, nature loses. Hard of hearing, dolomite. Darwinism, Garvanite. Hates a virus, terabytes. Hard to live with, parasites. Come on!
Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance? Situations and circumstances. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. How can we see each other with only a glance? Look, some of us robotic, programmed to follow. Some of us have logic and we wide awoke. Some of us don't got it till we learning slow. Some of us love God as part of having soul. Some of us robotic, programmed to follow. Some of us have logic and we wide awoke. Some of us don't got it, so we learning slow. Some of us love God as part of having soul. Situation and circumstance. Fight for wisdom, not ignorance. Trying to avoid it is not a lonely dance. Can we see each other with only a glance? Situation